What is the difference between NATO and the EU? Have you ever wondered how two major organizations like NATO and the European Union differ in their missions and histories? Let's break it down in a simple way. NATO, which stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was formed in 1949. Its main goal was to create a military alliance to counter the spread of communism during the Cold War. At that time, the Soviet Union was seen as a major threat, and NATO aimed to protect its member countries from potential aggression. The principle of collective defense is key here. If one member is attacked, all members respond together. This was a significant shift in how countries viewed military cooperation. On the other hand, the European Union is primarily an economic and political union. It focuses on promoting trade, economic cooperation, and political integration among its member states. The EU's roots can be traced back to the aftermath of World War II. The idea was to foster economic ties to prevent future conflicts in Europe. Former communist countries sought EU membership in the 1990s to transition from socialist economies to capitalist ones. This shift involved adopting reforms in business practices and legal systems to align with EU standards. Now, let's look at some key differences. NATO is all about military cooperation and defense. It was formed to protect against the spread of communism, while the EU is focused on economic integration and political cooperation. Membership criteria also differ. NATO looks for countries that can contribute to collective security and share democratic values. The EU requires member states to meet specific economic and legal standards. The nature of cooperation is another area where they differ. NATO involves military strategies and defense planning, while the EU deals with trade policies and regulatory standards. Historically, NATO was explicitly created to counter Soviet communism. In contrast, the EU evolved from economic collaboration to a broader political union promoting democracy and capitalism. From a communist viewpoint during the Cold War, NATO was seen as a tool of Western imperialism, aiming to contain socialist states. The EU's expansion into former communist countries symbolized the victory of capitalist ideology over socialism. Both organizations played significant roles in reshaping Europe after the Cold War. NATO maintained military strength, while the EU spread capitalist economic systems. In practical terms, NATO's formation was part of a strategy to prevent the spread of communism, reflecting fears of the domino theory. This theory suggested that, if one country fell to communism, neighboring countries would follow suit. The EU's role was more about restructuring economies to align with Western capitalist models, which many former communist states embraced as a way to move away from Soviet control. So, while NATO and the EU both involve cooperation among European countries, their goals are fundamentally different. NATO focuses on military security, while the EU emphasizes economic integration. Understanding these differences helps clarify how each organization has shaped Europe in the context of communism and the Cold War.